we have a problem at hand. Our identity provider, which we were in talks with in the recent weeks, the negotiations have been broken down. And we need to scrap them. We need to migrate away from the actual source where we get our users from, our authentication provider. This is not a small task. We had north of 400,000 users actually authenticating through their service. And we have a plethora of internal processes built on it, a web application that handles all the user management through the Auth0 API. This is something we have to do now. And also, we cannot have an outage because we have a strict no outage policy at Colossyan. Do you think we can do it? Well, yeah. Cool. Then you're more optimistic than I was. Yeah, at the end, we somehow did it. And I'm Ádám Belakovics, Senior Platform Engineer at Colossyan. I took a leading role in this project, and this will be the story of how through ruthless prioritization calls and just a smidge of Colossyan wartime mode, we managed to do something like this, to do something that seemed impossible. Yeah, well, the reason why it seemed impossible, I forgot to mention, is because we have 2 months for this whole thing. So let's get back to the start. You could ask, why would you use Auth0 in the first place? Why don't you just store your users in your database? Well, we have to go back to the early days of Colossyan. You mentioned this part. We were really keen on developing features all the way. And we didn't really want to back down on building fundamentals and core stuff because we were in a really tough competition at that time. And so it was an obvious thing to grab something off the shelf. And Auth0 seemed like the obvious option. Everybody was recommending it. They had ready-built SDKs, easy to integrate with. Everything seemed perfect. Now, in the early days, Colossyan was actually just so you know, you understand more why we were keen on a feature development other than implementing authentication, is that the early days Colossyan was essentially a glorified form, as you can see here. You could input some text, select an actor from a drop-down menu, click generate, wait a little time, and then you could receive a video. You could, of course, argue that Colossyan is still the same thing today. Of course, instead of this glorified form thing, we have now a fully fledged video editor interface with all the cool stuff. But Auth0 solved our problem that we could get here, focus on the features, and we shouldn't have to back down with authentication. Simple authentication would be simple, but we needed SSO and other stuff as well. And they offered a pay-as-you-grow model, which was ideal at this time. You didn't have much money. Initially, it was free, and it seemed like the best option. But this pay-as-you-grow model, after a few years, and especially recently, came back to haunt us. They constantly increased their prices every year without seemingly no additional features. This whole thing started to feel like a deal with the devil type of thing. We sold our soul at the beginning, and now we're stuck with Auth0. They're milking us. We need to find something else. Also, we faced with the limitations of Auth0 as well. They have a really strict global rate limit, and we usually hit it when there was a huge load on our platform. There was a special case, one of our biggest enterprise customers who decided to do a hackathon using Colossyan, and hundreds of their users used the platform at the same time. And because of a legacy weird bug, we hit Auth0's date limit, and the platform was unusable for 2 hours. This was a disaster. This was another sign we're grooving out of it. And also this kind of shines on that we needed more control as well. So with a SaaS solution like Auth0, you don't have control over your infrastructure. You can't scale it up if the load is too heavy. Also, that's just a funny part. The login page is so uncustomizable that to put down a terms and condition link, it took 1.5 weeks for our engineers. So we had our issues. And the other part was it's a curious thing with SAML SSO. They're kind of really bad at handling duplicate users. And this seems like a random detail now, but it will come back later. It's just with certain type of SSO, when you log in with a different method, your users won't be merged. And this, of course, causes problems. So we needed to change. We decided on Keycloak. Keycloak, kind of everything what Auth0 isn't. It's a self-hosted solution. It's open source. We finally get our control, which we like with Auth0, and it's essentially free, of course, not counting the maintenance cost. Fortunately, we had in-house experience with Keycloak, so we didn't really were concerned about this. So we get our control. Now everything is ready. Let's do the thing. What is this two-mouth thing? It's because of a technicality. Auth0, we were in an enterprise deal with them, and what they do is you are paying by the year for a whole year. You can't do monthly payment. You have to, if you decide to use Auth0, you have to pay 1 year in advance. That's how usually these SaaS companies operate. And when we found ourselves finally in a position where we could start this migration, see immediate example on starting project late. This was because of a different reason here. But we found ourselves in a position where the actual contract renewal was 2 months from now. And we had a decision of either we somehow do the migration or stick with them for another year and have all the ill effects that I told about before. So we decided to move on and try to fit this in. So this was essentially the deadline itself was the main influencing factor behind many of the decisions made during this project. You could say it was like a deadline-driven development, what we kind of applied here. Okay, but how do you handle a tight deadline this tight? With focus. We just set it out that our goal is to, by the 25th of September, our users will be able to log in and register to Colossyan. Nothing else matters. Focus is about what you do and, more importantly, what you don't do. And how you decide on what to skip, it's with scope cutting. This is kind of like a high-level overview of the project. These are the big main parts. And you can see the Keycloak setup, the web API rights, the user moving and internal processes here. Of course, this is super high-level. Imagine every one of these containing hundreds of stop tasks and different levels of complexities. But it's just a good way to demonstrate how we cut scope in each of these big categories. First of all, we made this decision really early. Internal processes, yeah, we have to skip on those. We will fix them after the release. Sadly, it's a tough decision, but the deadline was, even at the beginning, we knew it was really close. And so support uses Auth0 or to take a look at users' data when they logged in, when they can block them if they're misbehaving. This feature would be gone for a few weeks after the release, but we could live with that. We asked for patience. The same goes for many GTM function processes that was built on our user storage. It was an easy thing to cut at the beginning. The other decision, it really ties in really well with Imis talk. He talked about these feature flags versus feature branches and how the feature flags are more stable and how they are better. We did the same thing here and chose the feature branch approach, the large PR, maintaining 2 different states of the same application, resolving conflicts constantly. We didn't make this decision because we didn't learn from our old mistakes. We made this decision because we had no other option. Creating a new version of the web app that supports both Auth0 and Keycloak authentication would have been technically super challenging and would have taken more time than the scope of the whole project. So we had no other choice. If we want to finish on time, we have to employ this used method. Like we had many experience with this method actually. When the Keycloak setup, one of the main concerns was this rate limiting thing we did with Auth0. We asked ourselves the question, okay, Auth0 is a strict rate limit, but maybe something is wrong with us. Is there something wrong with us? So we were really concerned about, we deployed this new system, what will it be able to handle our load? What you can do, of course, is stress testing, but we decided to skip it and actually employed another method, which was just making some absurdly oversized instances and hyper-scaled database to put under the system. It has a high initial cost, but then I think you could go with that, and then once you reach a point where you underutilize the system, you can just scale down. And we actually got like a few weeks off of the project by not implementing stress testing. And moving users, it seems simple, right? We didn't even thought about this part as something complex at the beginning. Once we get there, once we started to do it, problems started to arise, and this turned out to be the biggest rabbit hole of the whole project. So what is the problem here? We have, I would say, a moderate amount of data. It's not crazy amount of data. The data of 463,000 customers. It's too large to handle by hand. If you run a script and there's errors, you can't really look at them one by one. It's just too much. But you can move the data with a simple script, and it will run a reasonable amount of time. Now, the challenge here was, of course, which I mentioned at the beginning, was the strict no outage policy. And moving data, so we're talking about authentication. This is like, in a SaaS, this is used all the time, every time. And having a no outage here is quite a challenge. So I just talk a bit about this, of how do we plan this, or what we did to do a seamless experience. Here is our initial state. There is the web application. It writes and reads data from the Auth0 database. What we want to achieve is the opposite. So the web app wants to read and write data from the Keycloak database. What we do first, because we want to do a replication method, we set up a dual write, which means that every changing operation and every login writes the user's data into Keycloak as well. At this point, we don't utilize the Keycloak data, it just sits there. This system actually in itself would be enough to achieve an eventual consistency between the two systems. But of course, we are operating on a tight deadline, and Auth0 will actually turn their service off in a few weeks from this point. So we needed to employ another method called bulk migration as well to move all the users' data that had not logged in during this period. And as a SaaS user, you could reasonably expect that the SaaS holds on to your data even if you don't log in for a long period. So we just wrote a script that moved the data. Then we turned off the Auth0 reading and changed the reading to Keycloak when the PR gets merged. That was the plan. And then we could, once the system is stable, then we could turn off, cut off Auth0 from our database, from our web application. Now it seems like a process that can work, but let's see how did it go in practice. This bulk migration part turned out to be really one of the main rabbit holes of this project, something we couldn't anticipate at the time. Now, where are we at the timeline at this point? We are 3 weeks before the release. We have everything set up. We have Keycloak, we have the web app mostly working, or at least the flows can be tested. And yeah, let's move the users because we got to this point. And then stuff happened. We realized something that's another behavior of Auth0, that it doesn't enforce identity uniqueness. Now, what is identity uniqueness? What essentially an identity provider does is maps your user's credentials to a user identity in their system. Auth0 has a really lenient approach on this, and they allow that you can have with the same user multiple identities, with the same email, multiple identities based on your login method. So let's say the right-hand side is I log in with Google, I get that identity, and if I log in with my password, I get the other identity. That of course poses a problem. You are essentially impersonating two different users in the same system, and this caused a ton of issues in the past, especially for support to handle all these cases. In theory, solving this problem is simple. You just move the resources from one user to another, but due to how our system is set up and how we employ NoSQL database as one of the main sources of our data, this was practically, I would still argue that this is not possible to do, or not just out of the scope of this project, but out of the scope as a whole. We just couldn't do this. We have a ton of data in our user database with old schemas. We couldn't just easily transfer the data of the user from one to another. So we had to find another method. And this will be the first part of the big trade-offs we did here, or the big scope cuts. We started to do a clustering of the edge cases, or the cases of how essentially this scenario can be. And based on that clustering, we started to implement a deduplication method that handles most of our users and ignore the rest. This seems like they were really annoyed by this fact that we are not doing a proper migration here, but it just didn't fit in time. I just go through some examples so you understand. There's like a trivial case. If you have a user with multiple identities, like an email associated with multiple identities, and only one of them has resources associated with this, let's get that and move that to Keycloak and ignore the other. You don't need the other. There's no resources associated with it. The recently logged in users, we had the fortune that we're using our new resource access method, workspaces. So what we could do is just move the workspace from one user to another based on a selection criteria, and then select the user and ignore the other, because the other user has no uses. The user will have their resources available to them while they log into the platform. There were some other edge cases handled, and then at the end, we just decided, okay, if the script can't handle this edge case, let's just fall back on last login and ignore the other user. This is super risky. But I thought about, I haven't told you about it, but we did many dry runs. So the way we did this clustering is we did dry runs. And during those dry runs, many of the edge cases were apparent, and we did that by extensive logging. And we kept that extensive logging in the actual code as well. So we had some confidence that with the logs itself, we can actually revert any change that we do. So that kind of gave us some confidence, but it was really in the cards that this will break, and people started to come by the dozens that they lost access to their drafts and videos. So it was a pretty risky take here. So now we have our script ready, we have the deduplication ready, let's just run it. At this point in time, we are 1 week before the actual deadline. And then we decide to run the script that moves the users. We just get to this point at this time. And I saw the weirdest issue, which I encountered, weirdest error log, which I encountered in the recent times. Keycloak essentially said when we ran the script that some of the users' ID doesn't fit in the database. Now, just leave a moment here. What, why, how? It turns out it's another curse of Auth0. Auth0 doesn't use UUIDs for user identification. They use these kind of IDs. So if you log in with a password, you get an Auth0 prefix. If you log in with Google, you get a Google prefix. And if you log in with SAML SSO, then you get a, never mind. You can ask me after the talk. You get this another weird form of ID. And the problem with that ID that it's longer than 36 characters. And as it turns out, Keycloak, which by default utilizes UUIDs, has a varchar 36 as the user identity table's ID type. So these IDs just wouldn't fit. We get back to the drawing board. Okay, maybe we should somehow do that user resource transfer, but we knew that we couldn't do it. Maybe we should do some tricky user mapping and just on the fly translate it. All these solutions would have taken time and do more harm than good. So we decided to alter the table of Keycloak. So change the database under Keycloak. I think you can understand. So this is software that we actually do not own. It's written in Java. We have no expertise in Java, and we are changing the database key of that software. And that's the worst kind of thing that you could do. Of course, this needs to be fixed later. It's first of all, it's risky that it wouldn't work, and it kind of prevents us from updating Keycloak ever again until we fix this issue. Because of course, all the database migrations might conflict with our change here. But it turned out to be a non-issue. Actually, everything worked. Outside of a warning of the caching system, everything worked. And now we need to fix it, but I'm kind of playing in my mind with the fact that we keep it this way. We'll see. Okay, so we have our users in Keycloak. Let's release it. Fortunately, I said 1 week before the release, we got this issue. We also working on more deduplication edge cases. I still to this day think that we could have finished on time, but like a few days before the release, we finally reached Auth0's customer support, totally unresponsive since the days that we told them we want to migrate off. And they told us that we have more than 2 weeks grace period, like a trial period after our contracts end, so we could utilize their platform. And that was a great thing. Because we could utilize this extra time for testing. We set up a test environment, which really replicated our production environment, and in Colossyan wartime fashion, we wrote the link to the company general channel and then asked everybody in the company, even salespeople, to jump on this, test it, so we can make sure that we have a smooth release. And in actual fact, the release was quite smooth. We didn't have really outstanding issues at the end, so it worked. And at the end, we were operating in a total wartime fashion. There was many weekend work involved, but as I felt on myself and on the team, this wasn't burdensome. It was more like we were on a mission. We were hyper-focused on getting off of Auth0 because everybody for their own reasons hated Auth0, and we just wanted to show it to them that we can do this. So this is how this wartime mentality worked for us. Okay, what did we learn? Well, that tech is fickle. Things that seem seemingly complex, like setting up your own Keycloak deployment, turned out to be super easy, thanks to modern infrastructure as code and Helm releases and stuff in platform engineering. It was super easy to set up, but moving the users, which seems simple, turned out to be one of the biggest pain during this whole project. So you can't really predict that. And if you want to achieve your deadlines, you need to reduce the scope ruthlessly, even during the planning phase and during execution as well. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's really compared to Imi's talk, now I essentially say that we did the same thing and it worked this time. But it was different. Our cultures totally shifted from the original one. It seems like we did the same thing, but all the decisions that we made here were conscious decisions mostly. So it may seem like the same thing that somehow turned out to be working, but it's not. Thanks for listening. My only hope is that I gave you some ideas on how to reduce the scope and achieve your deadlines. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer now.